Hello and welcome to the North Carolina History and the 21st African American Cultural Celebration. Our presenter, DeWayne Barton, will begin in just a moment, but we want to start with a few notes. Remember to ask questions in the chat, and we'll do our best to respond to them and share with our presenter. Please note that our presenters off-camera crew are masked for the safety of everyone. We would like to thank the following sponsors of the North Carolina Music History Foundation for helping to make this event possible.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for being with us this afternoon. We have an exciting presentation to bring to you today. DeWayne Barton is a spoken word artist and founder of Public Others International, which works to do community-engaged social enterprise work in and around Mr. Barton's hometown of Asheville, North Carolina. Good afternoon, DeWayne.
Hey, what's happening? Good. How you doing?
You can go ahead and take it away. We look forward to chatting with you on the other side.
All right, cool.
So I'm calling about the African Americans in Asheville Hoodies in the Hood tour.
Well, I want to thank you. That was our commercial for the tour business we started out of the backyard here in Asheville, North Carolina. But one of the reasons I got into this environmental movement, I was living in Hampton Roads back in the mid 90s, early 90s. And it was a news report saying that if you're a woman and you're pregnant, you shouldn't drink the water at this time. And that really shook me. And it made me say, what? If you're pregnant and you're a woman, don't drink the water, it may complicate your fetus. And I was like, man, what can you do about this? And then when I went out of the house and I started talking to different people in the community, it was like a lot of people was numb or show little concern about how impactful that would be for mothers and for the city at that time. So it really encouraged me to jump out in this environmental movement. And because at that time I wasn't, I say I was an artist, but I didn't define myself as an artist. I said, hey, I'm gonna start making art that would engage people around environmental and social justice issues. And the best way to do that was to use garbage, things that people throw away every day, and piece together this garbage into sculptures that would not only talk about the environment, but also the prison industrial complex. So it'd be a combination of you hitting two things at the same time. But before I go any further, and I'm supposed to do this first, I want to read you this poem that I wrote after seeing that news article and going out to the community saying, hey, what are we going to do about this as a community? And it's called Make Our Water Safe. Make our water safe. 70% me, 3/4 the earth. But I'm taught to hate me, hate others, flowing in other places, different streams, same water, different color. Do we care about ourselves? We drink and eat poison, throw the garbage in our waters, tires, glass, plastic, paper. Fracking for profit, who cares about the future? Make our water safe. Surrounded by water, none can we drink. We ignore our children and our elders. No kissing, no tight hugging. Just more disrespect and deception. We don't talk to our neighbors, suspicious, ready to blast any stranger. Our heaven on earth is threatened. So ants, birds, and fish watch our hate float by, collecting between huge stones, fallen branches, and decapitated trees. Fracking for profit, who cares about the future? Make our water safe. Surrounded by water, none can we drink. 70% me, 3/4 the earth. Used to be free, now costs a buck or more. Privatization, fuel prices, fluctuations, future battles for control. Uh-oh, more world wars. Make our water safe. Surrounded by water, none can we drink. Trust the water from the tap. Our futures and the bellies of our mothers, they can't. So we pass the bucks to judges, doctors, and lawyers. Listening for local, national politicians, they late. Make our water safe. Surrounded by water, none can we drink. How can we allow our flowing life to turn poison and brown? Then trust chlorine and other chemicals added to the tap? Can we trust our nation's water processing plants? Why buy bottled water without a quality test? Why we don't question huge industrial plants on the banks of our rivers and lakes? temporary man's total disrespect for Mother Earth while exploring mysteries in space. How we treat each other is how we treat the Earth. Make our waters safe. We need to flow together before it's too late, because we're surrounded by water and none can we drink. Great. Thank you. That's a poem I wrote based on that experience. And like I say, when we doing the art, we also add poetry to the art and music to try to really engage people through the arts. Now, we have three focuses: the arts, the environment, and social enterprise. And each one of those is used not only to engage people, but sustain people over time, so that we can not only talk about it and be educated about it, but that we also do something about it. Next slide. Like I say, I used to live in the Hampton Roads area, and when I moved back to Asheville, the particular neighborhood in West Asheville, the Burton Street community, was drugged out. It was cracked out pretty bad. And when we talk about the environment, we also got to talk about how do we heal and build after communities been traumatized by this whole war on drugs and how it just devastated our communities. How do we move forward after that, when we take the environment and the people at the same time and try to build them up at the same time, especially in the period of time where we also have this rapid increase of gentrification, and these once historically African-American neighborhoods are just being redeveloped, and a lot of those community members are being pushed out of play. So this right here is a photo taken back around 1992, when the grandmothers and the mothers of the neighborhood stood up to march up 200 deep of grandmothers, trying to bring attention to the Burton Street community to try to address the drug issue that was happening at that time. And when I returned back to Asheville, that's what we had to deal with at the time. Next slide. But the Burton Street community had a rich history. It was founded by E.W. Pearson, and he was an entrepreneur. I mean, you name it, he did it. He helped start the NAACP. He just was an amazing example. And we know he didn't do this alone. We know he had to have amazing community behind him to be able to make so many things happen. But when I first moved back here, I knew nothing of the history of the community. All I knew, it was cracked out and wasn't safe. So I said to myself, oh, well, what you gonna do about it? Next slide. So what we decided to do was one of the safest things we could do at that time was to start picking up the trash. Because people didn't feel safe to come outside their homes because of the drug carnival that was happening at that time, we said, well, at least we can clean up the place. So we picked up trash from crack pipes of 40-ounce bottles, and we created this green space in the neighborhood. And it was just supposed to be for the community itself, a place they could go to grow food, a place they could go to make art, a green space in walking distance to their home that would be a place that would help absorb trauma and inject inspiration. And it's all made out of garbage. It's all made out of trash that we collected. Now, we started this place, next slide, around 2003. Now, it was motivated by two things. Yes, the war on drugs that was happening in the U.S. at that time, but also the war, and that's the war in Iraq was another thing, and a reason why we created, and we named it the Peace Garden. Early on, we used to drive all the way to Washington, D.C., to go play drums and to march and say, don't go to war in Iraq, don't go to war in Iraq. and then drive back home to Asheville and have to dive on the floor because they shooting right outside of the house. So we said, don't go to Washington and protest when you don't know your neighbor down the street. And we decided to create this green space to create a platform where different neighbors and different organizations can come, touch, share, and empower each other. Next slide. These are some of the infrastructure that's built in the Peace Garden at this time. Like I say, we started off with just 40-ounce and homemade crack pipes, and it grew unto what you see today. We got a library, a classroom, a performance stage, a meditation spot, fire pit, and other things. And through this Peace Garden, we was able to launch several businesses out of the backyard. Next slide. We also, like I say, we also have a greenhouse. Now, one of the businesses we have a plant and flower sale every year. I think we do them twice a year. And it's been very successful. And what we try to do is create a model that can be replicated in other cities and to use what we have. A lot of times we say Santa Claus bring us something, but no, how do you use what you have around you right now to create what you need? Next slide. This is a classroom library. Next slide. Now, one thing that was very powerful for us, we was doing this work exclusively in this neighborhood. And then one day around, 2008, 2007, we went to UNCA. And this professor here, Dr. Mullins, did this thing called the State of Black Asheville. And what he did was do some measurements on how the same thing I thought was happening just in the Burton Street community was happening all over the city in these African-American neighborhoods. And it kind of popped my head. He said, wow, I thought it was isolated to this one space. And it really just blew my head up like, hey, why aren't we working together to address these systemic issues that's affecting us all the same? And I said to myself, now what you gonna do about it? Next slide. So we decided to start a Green Jobs training program. So I was the co-founder of Green Opportunities. We started this around 2008 in direct response to the drugs, the environmental conditions, and to help improve and rebuild Appalachia, restore these neighborhoods that's still in this whole drug war, and to train the people who live in these very areas to be the one who help design and build them out. Next slide. Another paper that was very transforming for me was this thing we did called the Crossroads. UNCA and several other elders and historians in the area, and they talked about urban renewal and how there was a federal policy, just like the federal policy of the war on drugs that was used to help lay the foundation for the destruction of historically African-American communities. And that too was a document that popped my head. And I said, well, what you gonna do about it? Next slide. Well, another thing we was able to do is to create a neighborhood plan. So after the community, or during the time the community was challenging all these drugs, they came to us and say, hey, we're gonna run a highway through your neighborhood. And we're gonna take up to 125 homes, about 150 homes, and we're gonna take businesses. And this makes the third time that they was gonna come through and do this. And we got designated as an environmental justice community. But what the community did was come together to create this neighborhood plan and say, okay, if you come in to take more, this is what we want out the deal. So we created this plan, to hand to DOT, and now they are going to be making some investments back into the neighborhood, but it's not the comprehensive investments that we would like. So we also working in partnership with DOT to fulfill all the dreams of that initial plan. Next slide. This is some more slides about the plan in a particular neighborhood, the Greenway off to my right. Next slide. This is the current. They're gonna come through about 3 historically African American neighborhoods in another 3 years: Burton Street, Hillcrest, and near PVA. And these 2 maps here are one and the same. But they just showing different developmental ideas that they plan to do after the highway is done. Is to exploring the pathways and what was supposed to be developed after that. So we're in a fight right now to get people on the same page on the same day to help protect their neighborhoods and benefit out of this. A lot of times we the victims of it. How do we position ourselves to benefit from this hustle here? Next slide. So what we also do, like Asheville, they say is one of the fastest gentrifying cities in the country. And what's happening, a lot of these once thriving African-American neighborhoods are being torn away. The Black history is being torn down, right? So what we doing, if they tear something down and we can't stop it, we go get a piece of it. We go get a window, a door, a doorknobs, a brick, and we incorporate it back into the art so we can keep telling the story even though the space is there no more. Next slide. Okay. So because of Crossroads, I told you about Crossroads, talking about urban renewal and the devastation that it took, that it did nationwide to African-American communities. We started Hood Huggers International. Now we get the name Hood Huggers International from tree huggers, because we know those tree huggers go hard. They chain themselves to a tree, live in the tree to try to protect it. We feel the same way about the hood. We're trying to protect what's left. Next slide. So in order to do that, we said, we got to tell people the story. So we started this thing called Hood Tours as a way to let people know what the hustle is. Like, tell them about the history. Talk about what's still standing. Talk about what's not here anymore. And then start these people on the track of doing something about it. And we're not just doing this tour just to tell the story. Nah, we telling you because we want you to come get down, And we also take a portion of the resources that we make on the tour to invest back into these places we highlight on the tour. So we also create an example on how we can do it together. Next slide. Now, doing these processes of, working with folks and getting some things accomplished and getting smacked in the face and stomped on other things, we decided to create a manual, best practice manual of how you can make a hustle happen and maintain that hustle over time. We've been in this for about over 20 years now. And like I say, there's some bright days and then some rough days. But we still here to make the hustle real. And we want to create a book to help document that, or we're creating a book to document that, to inspire and guide others. Next slide. Now we know we're not doing all this work just because. We're doing this because we're trying to leave something, an inheritance for the next generation to work with. Now, we need to do that. And we need to also instruct them on how to handle it once they get it, and not to just let it float away, not to just let it pass away. So the history is important. The healing is important, because I know if anybody out here has been doing community work and trying to save the world, you've been traumatized, you've been hit in the head a couple times, even from your friends. So we got to learn, we got to create a process that allows us to heal, maintenance ourselves, but and build at the same time. And next slide. And our current project that was based around first creating a peace garden and a number of other places that we maintenance and try to protect over time, we created this thing called the Blue Note Junction. We try to put more hot tubs in the hood. You know what I mean? Because why is it in the communities where the most trauma and devastation has occurred, we don't have more hot tubs? We don't have more therapy places. We have a basketball court. We have a liquor store. But why not have some more other options? So our goal is to create this green space in the Burton Street community. See, we got the hot tubs. We got the sauna. They say when you walk through nature, it helps you come down. We got this performance stage, greenhouses. So on one side, the green space is for the healing side. And the other side, for the business, is getting the bag, getting the money, making money, and re-empowering our communities to earn and build their businesses. And the goal is to get the young people in the neighborhood to help build this. Yes, we want experts, but we want the young people to learn how to build spaces and places that they can benefit from. Okay. All right. Next slide. Is that it? Okay. Oh, that's my contact information. If you want to get down, you want to see what we're doing, you want to copy the book, just let us know. And I want to say thank y'all for the opportunity to share with folks. All right. Now, it didn't change. It started, the initial mission was to help save these Black communities. I mean, I was like, what can you do? I mean, that's huge. I said, well, at that time, there wasn't a tour company that was focusing on African-American history and culture. So I said, well, maybe you could just tell the stories as a way to protect them, build momentum with the people that go on a tour to jump on the wagon too. And then you can always take money from the tour to help train young people to learn more about it, pay them to help keep up these places, and give money to groups who've been historically trying to hold these places down and have been given the proper support. So I say you just do what you can, and hopefully that mirror will shine on other people to want to get down.
Okay, well, there's a little bit of feedback, but it's not as bad as it was. So we'll keep rolling along.
Okay.
Can you tell me if you all could put the chat back up, tech team, please, so I can ask the questions that our viewers will have. Let's see. Are there any questions? Lots of compliments for you. A lot of people are really impressed with what you're doing. Worthwhile to have young folks help with building and establish things. Awesome presentation, great program. People are really digging what you're doing, DeWayne. How can we support you besides going on the tour? What is it that you need? How can we support Hood Helpers?
Well, if you go on our website, what we're trying to create is this time, talent, and treasure map so that we can, connect the dots. To me, we have these resources, we have these people with all this talent and want to help, but it's not a framework of accountability to make it last. So it's like, how do we connect and stay connected over time to address some of these more intense systemic issues that we have? You know what I mean? And so if you go on a website, you can see that. Now, this is all something that we created as a way to try to keep the momentum up and to keep the momentum sustained over time. Because if we would have stopped 5 years, 10 years ago, because this has not been easy, we wouldn't have seen the fruit that we see today around all the things we've been doing for a very long time. So I just believe if we serious about changing the planet, we need to be saying we all lifers and be getting down together, flowing together to make it happen, you know.
Judy asks, how do you keep the young folks involved?
You know, you got to pay them. You got to pay them and take them on trips and feed them. And then what I noticed too, you got to give them some responsibility. You got to give them saying, okay, I want you to go do this, and you don't go with them. And you got to, you know, with all this COVID and all this stuff going on, it kind of flipped their head a little bit. But I think that flip is an opportunity for us adults to plug them in. But what I see, we haven't been working together. We've been doing this thing I call creative pretending, where we say we want what's best, but we're not putting the same energy and creative, you know, passion it needs to make the hustle real. You know what I mean? But I think this is a good opportunity because I think all this stuff is catching our young people's attention. And now we need to plug them in and get them in position to learn, grow, and be the next generation to hold this down.
Can you talk about the various stakeholders who inform your work?
Well, we call it hood huggers because we trying to stay in the neighborhood. You know what I mean? We try to stay in our lane. So our first stakeholder is everybody in our neighborhood, the young people that live here, the churches, the ministers, any church in our neighborhood, the community center that involves the city, because we feel the neighborhood is the headwater. If we can't get it straight there, anything downstream from that is not going to be as effective and efficient. So we try to stay real focused there. Now, for nonprofit or organization wants to come into the neighborhood and provide some service, it needs to match the goals that's laid out from the neighborhood. It shouldn't be come in, we got a new magic trick for you, come over here and watch. No, you need to plug into what we already got going on, and then we build out from there. So it can be a variety of stakeholders, but right now we learned over time that it's better to stay in your own lane. You know what I mean?
What has been the response from the community and some of those stakeholders you mentioned, the people in the neighborhoods? What have they said to you?
Well, right now we scrambling a little bit because you know we being gentrified, right? So we got all these new people coming in, building these very expensive homes, and it's beef in the game right now. It's beef. It's like you got these old people who's been there in life. They've been through urban renewal, red line, and the war on drugs. These new people come in, touchdown. We made it to West Asheville. You know what I mean? We made it. And you know what I mean? So it's like, how do you get these people on the same page? And that's what this time, talent, and treasure map is all about. It's like creating that platform that allows relationships to develop. It's going to take more time, and people need to come correct. And that's why the young people are so important. So it's a process, and we're gonna keep working on. That's why these green spaces is important. That's why that neighborhood plan is important. How can we get everybody to get behind that neighborhood plan? You know what I mean? Wow, come help. Wow, come and help. Cool.
Judy writes, you talked about sustainability. How can you sustain your progress?
How can I sustain? What'd you say?
Your progress.
How do I sustain it? Well, we writing a book about it. We plugging into young people. We trying to hold us accountable. Now, one thing that can sustain our progress and that we moving in slow motion to do it is like we have some local policy around the environment, around from reparations to you name it. So I think if we can get people to come conscious to existing policy and start working collectively to do it, we can all sustain each other. You know what I mean? And I think that's another thing we try to stay focused on. What is our local policy saying? And how do we get all these stakeholders to get on the same page on the same day, and let's make the hustle real, you know?
Absolutely. Policy is key, as Judy says. Let's talk about this term, Appalachia. What does that mean, and how does Hood Huggers International pursue the goal of rebuilding Appalachia?
Well, that's a term from Frank X. Walker. He's a professor out in Kentucky. And it just talks about African Americans who've been up here in these mountains. A lot of people think Black folks not here. You know what I mean? So it's like we use that term to describe our focus areas, the areas we focus on. And the whole rebuilding is, I mean, we had a drug war in a lot of our cities, major cities that affected African-American neighborhoods disproportionately. We spent billions of dollars of coming in with law enforcement and lock up a lot of our community members. I mean, we invested a lot. We didn't never have a recovery period after that. What was the recovery period? It didn't happen. Okay. So that's why we have to not only rebuild the infrastructure of these neighborhoods, but we got the gentrification roller coaster rolling through. So it's like, how do we rebuild and also heal these neighborhoods that was disproportionately affected by this war on drugs? How do we do that? That's a question.
$1 million question.
Yes. Yeah.
What do you hope people take away from your work in this presentation today?
I want to be inspired and go get busy and start small. Start small, go get busy, go do something. You know what I mean? Go do something, go plant some trees, go plant a garden, go help somebody that's doing it, go give some money to an organization that's trying to do it. Find a young people, take them under instruction, teach them something. Provide yourself, you know what I mean? Support the people that's already doing the hustle. If you can't do anything, go support the people that's trying to make the hustle real. And if you can do something, go do something. You know what I mean?
I love it. You've done a lot of incredible work over the past few decades. What are you most proud of?
Learning how to forgive. Learning how to forgive people. And learning that in order to do good work, you got to heal. You can't be out here trying to help people and you hurt. You know what I mean? So I think that's been the biggest thing for me, because the art was it was therapy. I made the art, it was therapy. It was like, man, it's messed up. Don't go drink a 40 ounce. Go make some art. You know what I mean? So it's like, so I think working on learning how to work on my personal trauma individually and the trauma that has occurred in communities is the biggest thing. Yeah.
Love that. Linda says, speak the truth, keep it real. Love your presentation and work, Mr. DeWayne. Lynn says, small movements become big movements, which ultimately become change. And Judy says, this was so inspiring. Thank you so much for this conversation.
All right, cool.
A lot of us, I know I'll speak for me. I want to come on the tour, and I'm sure some other people do too. When is it available? Is it available every day of the week, or do I need to plan my trip for a specific day to Asheville?
Yeah, well, yes. And if you go to our website, hoodhuggers.com, it'll break it all down to you. And Angie will take care of you. But we usually do the tours on Fridays and Saturdays. And if you would like a time during the week, you definitely got to schedule that in advance. Yes.
All right, we have our marching orders. Thank you so much. This was amazing to learn about, and we are wishing you the very best in your efforts.
All right, cool.
Have a great afternoon.
All right, you too. All right, bye.
Be sure to watch some live performances taking place throughout the day, screening on our website, nc-aacc.com. Thanks for joining us for the 21st Annual African American Cultural Celebration, which continues today until 5 p.m.